Hello, Steve White, Steve White's 89. Well, I watched a film called Palmer today, and I want to do a little review of it. I hadn't really planned to see this film. I saw a preview of it a little while ago, and I thought it looked interesting, but I hadn't really planned to see it. But today was the last day of my internet plan, and I had some data. I'm like, don't want to waste this. So I thought, well, just find a bunch of movies or something that you were thinking of watching, and just watch them through the day. So I watched some movies, and I watched one called Palmer. It was released on Apple TV on January 29th. It stars Justin Timberlake as Eddie Palmer, and it has a little boy called Ryder Allen playing the boy Sam. There's a teacher called Maggie, played by Alicia Wainwright, and the mother of the child, whose name is Shelley, is played by Juno Temple. Now, the film was written by, I'm not going to be able to pronounce her last name, Cheryl Guerrero, and it was directed by Fisher Stevens. Now, it's a fairly simple tale. My only real issue with the film, which came up fairly early, is there's not a lot of exposition. You're just sort of dumped in the film. And there's some things are explained as the film goes along, but a lot of things aren't. So I found that very frustrating. I had trouble working out who was who, and I still am not quite sure who some people are related to in the film, frankly. But I'll get to that. So the main character, Eddie Palmer, he was a footballer who injured himself, lost his scholarship, got into drugs, ended up doing a robbery of a friend whose father apparently had a lot of money. The father came home, had a gun. They fought him off and nearly beat him to death, and he got put in jail for 12 years for attempted murder. Now, he gets out after 12 years, and of course he goes to move in with his grandmother. His dad died when he was 15, his mum ran off when he was about 5, so his grandmother's basically raised him. Now, while he's been away, she's also kind of been raising this boy Sam, because his mother, who lives in a caravan on, I think on his grandmother's property, she's basically been raising him, and he's very he's non-gender conforming, he's very flamboyant, and even though she's this devout sort of religious person, she's totally okay with him. Like, he's just sitting there doing her hair and doing her makeup, and he's obsessed with this show about princesses, and he loves princesses, and he wears maroon cowboy boots and bracelets and shirts with flowers, and he's like a dumpy little boy with mousy brown hair and big glasses, and he's very gentle, very sweet, and he just is totally oblivious to the gender roles he's supposed to be obeying, and how people look at him. And you're kind of surprised that a kid would get through in a small town like this. But his mother, her one redeeming quality, she's a drug addict, and she basically disappears for weeks at a time, which is why the grandmother, his mother, Palmer's grandmother, has basically been taking care of him, is because the mother keeps running off, and she's gone, and she is gone for a big chunk of the film, and Vivian is basically just taking care of this child, and Palmer is just sort of tolerating him. He's sort of there. He's looking for work. He's very quiet. He's very shut down. JT does a good job of playing this remote, quiet, shut down guy who doesn't have a phone, who doesn't use social media, he's got out of jail, and he's just trying to function. He's just trying to find work with the pressure of the whole town knowing who he is and where he's from and where he was. He eventually gets a job as a janitor through mostly the fact that the guy knows his grandmother. And he does have a lot of experience, because I guess he worked as a janitor in the prison or something, because he didn't get in any trouble. He basically just was a good model prisoner. So the film doesn't really feel the need to define the child, which I find is interesting. He just is, and that's nice. And even though Palmer is tolerating him at first, he does sort of does seem to be aware of the fact that he's vulnerable and that he is being bullied, and he does start to care about him. He does start to warm up to him. Very early on, I should have mentioned, the grandmother Vivian dies, and this is the second film. And like, I watched Superman and Lois last night, where mother dies, and then the mother dies here as well. So didn't need to see that 2 days in a row. But this basically means he has to take care of him, and right away he takes him to the police station, just dumps him. But before he can even finish his cigarette at his car, he sort of realises he has to go back for him because he will not survive in the system. So he goes back and gets him. He takes care of him. They find a nice little groove. He takes him to his football games, where he's more interested in the cheerleaders and bowling, and Palmer has to go to a couple of little princess tea parties and, hold his pinky up while he has his tea with the little girl, who's his friend's daughter, who's friends with Sam. And he tries to explain to him, or he kind of says to him a few times he's supposed to be a boy, and then he tries to explain things to him. And there's a scene where he wants to buy a princess outfit for Halloween, and he's explained to him that people don't understand this. People don't expect this. People expect the girl to wear the princess dress and expect him to wear the prince costume. So you think he's going to buy him the prince costume after he gives him his talk, but of course there's the princess one sitting on the counter, and there's a teacher involved. I don't know if I mentioned. Yeah. She gets involved fairly early on, and she becomes romantically interested in Palmer eventually, but she mostly starts off being interested in the child. And there's a nice moment where she knows what's going to happen. She asks the boy before Halloween, "What are you wearing for Halloween?" He says, "Well, I'm going to be a princess." So she comes dressed as a man. She comes dressed as the principal for the day, because she's trying to show the other students that boys can dress up as girls and girls can dress up as boys, and that, at least on Halloween you can be whoever you want. And the bigger sort of idea is that you can be who you want in life. Now, this film is not heavy-handed. It doesn't preach. It doesn't define the child. It doesn't sort of explain pronouns and all that, or sort of woke, over the top, beat you over the head sort of. It just lets people be who they are and shows people navigate around that and around them. And it's very subtle. It's very simple. It doesn't try to do anything complicated. It's a basic redemption story. We've seen them before, but the actors and the characters, it just works. I really enjoyed it. There's a couple of little, I want to call it climax, a couple of sort of moments in the film. There's one where the boy comes home crying. He's got makeup smeared all over his face, and Palmer, who has defended him at least to one bully and said, "If you touch him again, I'll break your arm," basically. He expects it was one of the kids who bullied him, and it was actually one of his friends, an adult, that did this to the boy when he was at the daughter's tea party, basically. So he goes to the pub and beats the hell out of him in front of everyone. And I'm like, oh God, there goes his parole, there goes everything. But that doesn't happen, because he's got something over the other guy who, because there was more than one guy who did this, the other guy who is the son of the sheriff. Apparently he went to jail in part for him, that he was involved in some way and he didn't expose him or betray him or something. So he holds that over him, and basically this guy gets dragged out of the place for just a bloody mess, and he doesn't get in trouble for it. And I'm like, I'm okay with that. And the next big thing that sort of happens is that the mother comes back. And the mother, I think I mentioned before, is a drug addict. And she comes back with a guy. He's abusive, of course. She comes over, takes Sam back. He misses school. She can't take care of him. Eventually he gets taken away. Palmer wants to get guardianship, and he's in the process of doing that when this happens. He tries to get custody, but they won't give it to him because he's on probation. And then this woman walks into the court, a complete mess, just yelling and screaming and blaming everyone for everything. But despite all this, she still is given Sam, which just shows how messed up the system is, that this guy who's got himself together and loves this kid's been taking care of him, but they won't give him to him because of his history, and that they give it to the drug-addicted woman who is just a mess, just because she is the biological mother. So she takes him and she loses him. He goes into the system. Palmer, she gets him back, and got a little mixed up there. Palmer eventually sees the boyfriend beating up her. They're taking drugs in front of Sam, and he basically just takes Sam and runs off with him. Has no idea where he's going. He just has him, and of course they report him for kidnapping. He gets arrested, but she doesn't charge him, and then she gets the kid back again. And he basically asks her for custody. She doesn't want to give it to him at first, but eventually she works out that she's not a good mother. She can't take care of her child, and she needs to get herself together. She needs to get off the drugs, and she knows that he'll take care of the child. So she does give him temporary custody, and she goes off to get help. He moves out of the house because, I forgot to mention this, the grandmother, who's obsessed with the church, gives the house to the church, not to the grandson who needs it because he's never going to be able to earn a great wage and own a house because of his police record that's going to stop him from ever having a career in this town or a big... I was so frustrated. Like I said, all the characters have some sort of flaw or some redeeming quality, and her flaw was her just obsession with religion. And she cared more about giving the money to the church. They're just going to spend that on, like, they embezzle that stuff. That never goes to any of the actual charities or any of the people that actually help it. They just spend it on themselves. They just buy a nicer car. So I was absolutely horrified the fact that she, instead of helping to set her grandson and this boy she loved up, like, for life, by having them basically have their own house, she gives it to the church and leaves him. So he ends up, I guess, he moves in with the teacher because they're dating. And I guess they take Sam there. Sam forgives his mother. She goes and gets help. They basically live happily ever after. You see him taking him to school. He accepts him. The boy accepts Palmer. It's just a nice story of people accepting each other. It's not overdone. It's not pushed in your face. There's no big explanations. It's very subtle. There's a lot of things that aren't answered, a lot of things that aren't resolved, and that is kind of, I think, in life, you don't get all the answers. You don't always get to say what you want to say or need to say. And I think the film does that deliberately, but I found it very frustrating in the beginning because there was a lack of exposition, because we're used to being told everything we need to know as the audience. So it was an interesting film. It was a good film. JT did a better job playing the shutdown Palmer when he sort of warms up towards the end, and he has a few scenes where he's being sort of just a sort of calmer, gentler sort of person. Just sort of seems like JT sort of playing himself, but the rest of the film he did a very good job of playing this character. So overall, I mean, it got me. I cried a few times. I had to get a tissue because my nose was running. It was quite good. I love that they didn't feel the need to define the child. There's no attempt to make him conform to anything, to any sort of expectation. He's just allowed to be himself. And it's really just a film about acceptance and, redemption. And I just really enjoyed it. I really liked it. And I'm glad I saw it. There's probably a lot of these good little films that you don't see because they don't have the big budgets and the publicity and promotion and everything. But I think we're going to see more of this on streaming and less of the big blockbusters. I think their day is sort of gone. I can't believe I'm still talking after nearly 14 minutes. But I just had a bit I wanted to say about it. And I just wanted to do a review because I'm still in social isolation in the Corona zone. So don't really have anyone to talk about movies with, and I just wanted to share this, so I thought I'd make a video or do a little review. Maybe someone who hadn't seen the film will see my review and then want to see it. So it is a good film. It's worth seeing. If you haven't seen it, see it. I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. I think I covered everything. Got my notes. I can never read my own handwriting, but I think I covered it all. Yep. Palmer. It's a good film.